6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I got it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely didn't.
Ready?
Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to episode 4 of Rank and Review. This is the show where I force-feed my friends 6 genre movies and make them rank them from their least favorite to their favorite. My name's Larry Parsons, and today I'll be asking my friend Terry Schroell to look at 6 movies on the subject of Bedeviled. That is, movies involving demons, devils, exorcisms, and whatnot. So, without further ado, enjoy episode 4 of Rank and Review. Oh, by the way, beware of spoilers and naughty language. But come on, we're all grown-ups, aren't we? So, yeah, this would be episode 4 of Rank and Review, this time with my dear friend Terry Schroell and beer.
I'm not doing this sober.
Why would you? You specifically chose the subject of Bedeviled with, dealing with demons and exorcism and the devil, because you said you find them particularly creepy.
Is that what I said?
That's what you said.
Okay. Well, I mean, looking at the selection, at least the 3 that I knew.
Right.
Okay, yeah, creepy.
Right. Were you raised specifically, like, religious? Is there a reason? Is there something that...
Well, I'm Catholic. Okay, so then obviously with the movies that deal with exorcism, okay, I have a little bit of knowledge about that, but besides that, no, it's really just about ooh, what if, that kind of creepy feeling.
I was raised sort of under a vague Christian doctrine, but we were not churchgoers. We would say grace at the table when we were at my grandparents' house.
Sure.
And I sort of consider myself religiously unaffiliated these days. So I don't have the specific paranoia about that some people would.
No, but like you'd have to go to Catholic school.
Right.
You have to come from that place of guilt being installed into you and fear.
The devil is a real thing,
yes,
and he is watching you. Yeah.
Then you get it, or at least you're tricked into getting it.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're told when you're a little kid that there's sort of like this evil version of Santa Claus has always got his eye on you, and he's writing a list anytime you do something bad.
And then the movies have given us this whole new of what he looks like, and it's not ho 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 with the pitchfork,
right,
and the horns and so. Oh no, it's creepier,
right,
and far more the subterfuge and everything that comes along with Satan.
Yeah. Oh. And I would mark one of these movies specifically as one of the scariest movies that I've ever seen, period. And that's coming from a place of not particularly deep religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. But some people get really messed up about it. Some people don't like to watch it. There's a movie, it's not one of the ones we're talking about, but The Last Exorcism, which has like a kind of a cheesy special feature on the DVD menu. It's a prayer that you can recite to protect yourself from demonic influence from watching a movie on the subject of the devil.
Wow.
I know. So it's a very real fear in people.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah,
yeah,
it sure
absolutely.
makes money too, doesn't it? Yes.
What do you think of horror movies in general? People keep asking me why I'm doing the podcast, and part of the podcast is figuring out why I'm doing it. And the answer I've been giving is that I don't think that horror movies are respected and or understood by people as a rule, but certainly by critics. So,
well, I mean, I can understand that in particularly with the genre of comedy. I mean, I guess, no, not necessarily. Anyway, getting back to your question, horror movies, I'm kind of hot and cold about.
Right.
More cold than hot, because there's so few really, really good horror movies.
That's because we haven't made one yet.
There have been good if in this broad genre called horror, right? There have been just dynamite movies. And I mean, when I look at my top 10 list of movies, my favorite movies, most of them are actually out of the 80s, believe it or not, but a couple of them are actually horror movies.
Legitimate capital H horror movies? Are you talking about like Ghostbusters or something like this?
No. One of them would be The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing, which is just and more to the point, not because like the dog's head explodes, and then everyone's like, oh my god, no, it's the paranoia that's portrayed by everyone on that base.
Somebody here is not who they say they are.
Yes, and they're very, very good at doing it, and they could be right next to you, and before you know it, you're it, and you have no idea. That's just such a great premise. And why that movie was so effective. Of course, the dog's head suddenly splitting open was really cool, too.
Yeah.
The dude's chest popping open, that was really cool.
But it's as much about the story as it is about anything else.
Absolutely. Great movie.
So that's good. You're versed in horror movies. I wasn't forcing you to eat a sour meal necessarily.
Not necessarily. Although I do have a couple of things to say about a couple of the movies that you did make me swallow.
Fair enough. Well, we should talk about the movies that we are going to mention. We have the classic Exorcist by William Friedkin. Actually, this is the second episode in a row where we discuss a William Friedkin film. William Friedkin directed Bug.
Really?
Karen Giese and I were discussing that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Speaking of John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness.
Yes.
He considers this part of his Apocalypse trilogy. The first being The Thing, the second being this movie, the third being In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh.
We have Sam Raimi's first film, The Evil Dead.
Classic.
We have The House of the Devil, which is a popular cult choice from up-and-comer Ty West. And then we have two, in quotation marks, based on a true story, horror movies, The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Rite. The Rite's based on a book that came out recently about courses that priests at the Vatican can take to teach them how to conduct exorcism.
And this movie came out in, 2010?
I think it's like 11. It's relatively new.
It's really new, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just let people know who you are a little bit here. Okay. Terry and I have done a lot of acting on stage together, and Terry directed a short film that I wrote, and was in a couple of things. We went to the prestigious Yorkton Film Festival together, and would you say we've done hundreds of shows together? Probably.
Yeah. We got totally screwed out of that award too, didn't we?
Totally. Yeah, we were competing with a show that's airing.
A TV show.
Yeah, exactly.
Which apparently is a short film.
Yeah.
I did not. Did you know that?
I didn't. I didn't know that people that were making films with their little handheld digital camera were gonna be competing with the nature of things.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of crazy, but
Larry got very drunk.
I did get very drunk.
He started calling on cast members of Corner Gas.
Yeah. In a perfect world, it would have ended with me punching out the mayor from Corner Gas.
That'll do, Larry. Okay, sit down, Larry.
All right. Well, are you ready to talk about some of these movies?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
I don't care about my reputation. What I care about is telling Emily Rose's story.
The Church venerates thee as her guardian and protector. To thee, the Lord has entrusted the souls of the redeemed to be led into heaven. Pray therefore to God of peace to crush Satan beneath our feet, that we may no longer retain man's
Do you understand how long they can put you away for this?
I want people to hear what only I can tell.
And what is that?
What really happened to Emily and why.
Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about in our 6 movies on the topic of Bedeviled is a film called The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is one of the films that is purported to be based on a true story. Although the true story involved, I believe, a Russian or Ukrainian girl. And there was a court case in which 2 priests and her parents were put on trial as to see whether or not they were responsible for this woman's death.
Was this American?
The film is American. The story, I believe, happened overseas.
Oh,
but,
okay.
They, of course, adapted.
But it's beginning to make more sense now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the central sort of premise that the film sort of grabs hold of is the fact that in a court of law, they are debating whether or not a priest can, is held responsible for a woman who, spoilers, she died.
Sure.
Is it his fault because she wasn't getting proper, that was a beer, she's not getting proper medical attention? Or is he responsible?
Larry, I'm just going to say I have to drink talking about this movie.
Okay, so you're not a fan. Well, we'll get that out of the way right away. Tom Wilkinson plays the priest in this, and Laura Linney plays a non-believer who is put in the position of defending him. And I guess she doesn't have to sign up and say she believes, but she has to legally prove in court that he is not responsible.
And she does say at the onset that she's very gung-ho about doing it because she's trying to become a partner with, like she wants her name on the...
she's motivated.
On the envelopes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Campbell Scott is the prosecuting attorney, and he's a believer. He's all in, and he though believes that this man is a man of God and faith. He also is taking the tract that what he did was wrong and irresponsible. You don't bring out the crosses and the holy water. You take this girl to a hospital and you make her well. So I am getting that you were not a big fan of The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Why not? What was your big issues with the film?
It was interesting that you started off that she was trying to prove that the priest. The whole thing about the movie is that it's trying to prove that the priest was negligible.
He's on trial for being negligent, and in order to prove that she wasn't, she basically has to say that he was actually doing an exorcism, which would be conclusively saying in a court of law that demonic possession exists.
Right.
That's the interesting fact about the case.
The interesting, and frankly, as far as I'm concerned, as the movie unfolded, this is the only point that the movie is trying to put. It is essentially, we've left it up to the lawyers to prove that Satan exists, because neither faith nor science can do it anymore. And this has been proved either way over and over again. So let's let the lawyers decide.
Yeah, and the fact that this did happen in a courtroom, and the priests were found guilty.
Okay, but like you said, what courtroom?
Yeah.
Are we talking remnants of the old Stalin regime or something like that? For all we know, what year was this from?
Oh, this was in the late 60s, I believe. Yeah.
There you go.
Please forgive me my errors in judgment here. I'm really going to make more of a point to have my notes in front of me when I'm doing these podcasts. But the case that The Exorcism of Emily Rose is based on based on a court case from actually 1978. The victim was an Annalise Michel. And, there were two priests and the parents put on trial and asked to be made responsible for her death. Ultimately, the accused were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence, and they were sentenced to 6 months in jail, which was later suspended, and then 3 years of probation. It was a far lighter sentence than anticipated, but it was more than requested by the prosecution, who had asked that the priests only be fined and that the parents be found guilty but not punished. During the trial, the major lingering issues were related to the church itself. A not guilty verdict could be seen as an opening the gate to more exorcism attempts and possibly the same unfortunate outcomes, but for the most part, experienced observers believed the effect would be the opposite, that merely bringing charges of negligent homicide against priests and parents would provoke changes and more caution. Where Annalise died in her home in July of 1976, and according to the autopsy, the cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. But, I mean, there are people who take it really seriously. Mm-hmm. The priests were convicted, but they were, fined and slapped on the wrist. And the parents were convicted, but they were basically sentenced for time served and pain and suffering. They were made, big...
It sounds to me like they just wanted the problem to go away. And I'm talking about the original, the actual events of where this movie came from.
But I wish I could remember her name, the woman that this story was based on. Her grave is like a site of pilgrimage for religious people. Even she's sort of she's not an official saint, but she's some sort of religious mecca for certain people.
Because she had an evil spirit in her?
Because people believe that she is proof that there was an evil spirit in her, and that she died for the sins of the young of the day.
And,
right?
and thereby proving the existence of God.
Yeah.
Right,
It's validating to their belief system.
Yeah.
I think,
Mr. Satan, isn't it true
Yes.
that on the day of October 12th, you possessed, they put what was on trial?
Yeah. Well, there was a murder case. Emily died. Was he negligent? Is he responsible by negligent homicide?
That in itself would have been interesting.
Yeah.
That would have been, but the way that this movie was packaged was exorcism, Satan, evil, that sort of thing. If they had actually just made this as a courtroom drama, I might have been interested in it.
Well,
Instead, she's waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. What's that?
Well, and when they
Rubbish.
attempt to scare us with Laura Linney's character,
Yeah.
they fail.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're showing us the backstory of Emily Rose, I think there's some creepy stuff. And I appreciate, because it is a court case, that we see both sides of the story. We see what it would be like, by Tom Wilkinson's perspective, that she was possessed of a demon. And we see Campbell Scott's perspective, that she was a schizophrenic and an epileptic, and that she did act out in these crazy, bizarre ways, and she did have a deep-held belief that would help her to express it in that specific way.
I'll totally get that,
Like, on its face. And the fact that they were sort of blending the Exorcism movie with a Law and Order type of format was different. I hadn't seen it before.
I just think the whole thing fails miserably.
Yeah.
Because it's pick a road, right? The thing is that by calling it that, what are they trying to do?
The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Make a horror movie.
Yeah.
And that's not what this was. They threw a lot of money at this movie. They at that time, when did this come out? 2000
This is according to the DVD case, which is very hard to read.
I need glasses too.
I want to say 2005. It's in very fine print. If I'm wrong, I will fix that in the editing.
It was filmed in Vancouver, I know that.
A lot of Canadian actors in supporting roles.
Yep.
We spotted the Chief from Battlestar Galactica in like a 2-line role and stuff like this.
But this is one of those things where, as soon as it started, and as soon as you started to figure out where this movie is going, and I'm very good at that, I can figure this out, where this movie is going. Mm-hmm. Right off the bat, when did Tom Wilkinson get big? It was after sort of, and wasn't he nominated for something at that time? She was
in
also
the bedroom. He would recently been nominated for In the Bedroom.
And she was nominated.
You Can Count on Me, yeah.
And so this is around the same time, right?
Yeah, 2 Oscar nominees in one movie.
Yeah. This is a contract film.
You think?
Oh, totally. They wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole.
I don't know. Tom Wilkinson has been in some shit.
Yeah, okay, but as far as this is concerned, he kind of phoned it in.
Yeah.
And as far as she's concerned, I think she kind of phoned it in too. I think they got enough money to justify themselves being in it, and they threw a lot of money at the film, and I bet you it was in the theater for a week maybe, and then
I think it did reasonably well. I don't have the figures in front
of me.
And
I bet you there were a lot of disappointed people too. Because what were they expecting?
They wanted a horror movie, and they got something a little smarter than your typical horror movie, I would argue. At least trying to be. I mean, if it was just another movie about someone being possessed, and we've seen the quintessential movie on possession, and we're going to talk about it later tonight.
Yes, but every time they're in the courtroom, again, it's like I fully expect Satan to come out. And,
I now call Satan as a witness. Yes,
and then the fast-talking liar, that sort of thing. It was comically, and it just laid flat after about 45 minutes, and I didn't care.
Yeah. Well, where I disagree with you overall in the movie, because I would say that I liked it overall. I wouldn't say it was amazing, but
Larry,
shame on me. I will say that it's the flashbacks. It's all the stuff with Emily when she first goes off to college, and we see the differing perspectives. What Emily sees, what we think that the prosecutor would see, what Tom Wilkinson character says happened. I think all of that stuff was really well done, well acted, and pretty creepy.
You know,
the stuff in the
it's like
courtroom was less creepy, but it was interesting.
It was like there was two different movies battling to be the better movie or the more salient movie in this. Yeah. And then what the problem with that is that it makes everything even hokier. Like the cat, what was the name of the actor who played Emily Rose?
Carpenter.
And she's got sort of those googie eyes, you know, and everything like that. So of course they have to pick someone.
Jennifer Carpenter. Sorry, she's in Dexter now.
Oh, is she? Yeah. Well, there, see, yeah, she has to be sort of weird, you know, and it's everything was over fabricated. When you went to that side of the movie, I didn't like it.
The characters who get to play the person possessed, in a lot of ways, get the juicy, flashy role. And like I used to say, it was impossible to overplay a supervillain until I saw Tommy Lee Jones play a supervillain in that shitty Batman movie. I honestly didn't think it was possible to overplay a supervillain. And same thing sort of goes with you're playing someone possessed. It's pretty much impossible to go over the top. And as a rule, most actors or actresses, more often actresses who are playing the possessed role, just let themselves off the leash and go full bore. And that's either going to agree with you or not. I thought she was fine.
But I mean, if we just got into that argument about what do we actually find as a believable possessed person, then you really have to leave that up to the actor. And then, okay, well, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, altogether. We could spend a full hour on just
totally.
that. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think that there was some real substance and meat to the story. I didn't have any real complaints with the actors. Laura Linney is another one of these actresses who a lot of times I feel like I can see her acting. Mm-hmm. And it was less of a problem with me in this movie than it is
Really?
usually.
I thought it was more of a problem.
I will agree, like what you said about the whole business of her waking up at 3 a.m, because that's like when the bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
When they try to make the movie about her having some kind of religious conversion or being convinced of the evil spirits, that's when it doesn't work for me. But I would say that takes up maybe 10 minutes of screen time.
See, the thing is that I just saw her in Hyde Park on Hudson, where she plays, it's very. She's not like in this one. She's playing a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm tough, and I'm a woman lawyer, so I have to be extra tough, and blah 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 blah. And shut up! You're just doing the same old that we've seen 100 times before. But her subtlety when she does it is really really good. This, and here's my one-word review. There. I said it again.
Right. Well, obviously we disagree on the exorcism of Emily Rose.
I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods, and I have no doubt that whatever I have resurrected through this book is sure to come calling for me.
Themselves. They're alive, Ashley.
Okay, well let's move on to something that I'm guessing we're going to have some more common ground on. In 1982, the world was introduced to a director named Sam Raimi and an actor named Bruce Campbell, and movies would just not be the same again. I would argue.
Bruce Campbell looked like an absolute goober?
Oh yeah,
back then. Like how old was he?
I couldn't say.
I think he was like maybe early 20s or something like that.
Wet behind the ears. They all were.
What a goober-looking guy.
This is a movie made for no money on weekends by a bunch of friends. And
for how long? How long were they doing this? Like they were still shooting shit like months upon months later.
Yeah. And there's interesting people working behind the scenes. In fact, Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers was brought in and did some editing on the film. They were friends, and I think they actually lived together. There's a whole circle of people in the early 80s living together who would grow up to be A-list Hollywood.
Yeah.
Frances McDormand, the Coen brothers, Sam Raimi.
Academy Award winners.
Yeah.
Top box office grossing movie of that year. Yeah.
But at this time, they're in their sort of...
Nobodies.
Yeah, they're nobodies. They don't have money. They don't have power. They can't just greenlight any movie. And this is college students, basically, making a movie. And you know what? It kind of looks like college students making a movie. I will defend a lot of things about this movie, but the acting is not that strong. And some of the production value is really good, and some of it's not. Sam Raimi's camera work, as always, is really cool, and that's where the movie really kicks ass. It's sort of in the technical level, the long tracking shots through the woods, the infamous scene where a woman is sort of attacked and violated by the trees themselves.
I don't think he actually his camera work per se was where it developed into, like for instance with the sequel to this, right? The most interesting thing about this movie for me is the pacing, for one thing, because they said themselves, it was who was it, Tappert, and
Robert Tappert is a producer.
Anyway, they all got together and they more or less just wanted to make a horror movie that they wanted to see, which meant go, more, again, faster, funnier, louder, and that's what they did. And I don't think, as far as Sam Raimi is concerned, I don't think he understood what he was doing. Oh, obviously he didn't, but at the same time, he just threw stuff at the screen, I don't think he understood just how entertaining this was going to turn into. Yeah. Also, there's that comedic quality to it, which I don't think he was actually aware of at all.
It's certainly the least of the Evil Dead movies. This is the least overtly funny.
Oh, yes, yes.
The second movie is quite funny, and the third movie is just frankly a comedy.
Ridiculous.
It's a comedy.
Yes,
yeah. But I guess the plot for this movie, which we haven't mentioned, and if you're into horror movies and you haven't seen Evil Dead...
There was a plot.
Yeah. If you're into horror movies and you haven't seen Evil Dead, I don't know what I can say to you, but a bunch of friends go to a cabin in the woods and they find a forbidden book and read from it, and bad shit starts to happen. That is the movie. That is the movie.
But you know what? If you hadn't have said that and you just say to people, just watch the movie, then by the end of it, everyone would have watched it and go, what? Boing! And then they'd go, wait a minute, there was nothing to that. They didn't do anything. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sorry. The thing about this movie is that it's just entertaining. Mm-hmm. That's it.
It will hold your time. It's 85 minutes long. It gets in, it gets out.
Yep.
Like I say, the acting is not good, but usually for people who have an appetite for these movies, you're going to have to, build up a bit of a...
I have seen far worse.
Yeah.
In far worse. So.
If there's a problem to the movie beyond its sort of low production values, I think it's something that actually gets aped in the second movie. Mm-hmm. It's the repetitive nature of this movie. Something happens, and they all, either a couple of the characters or all of the characters, slowly walk towards this mysterious thing, and then something goes boo. And then some other mysterious event happens, and they all go slowly walking in a different direction, and something goes boo. I mean, this happens over and over and over again.
I mean, we always know this. We see this all the time, because there we are and we're watching a box and we're watching the action on it, right? And then they're like walking, and obviously they can't see anything off the frame, mm-hmm. when obviously there's this gigantic, maniacal whatever the hell it is. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, it was right there. The camera just turned after that. And it's like, how could you have not have seen that?
Yeah. And
we see that over and over again. With this film, you don't care.
No.
Because it's just like, yeah. Hot gore on them. Let's go. So when you get possessed.
It's interesting what you were saying about how Sam Raimi likely didn't know quite how potent a film that he had mm-hmm. here, and that it would really, mm-hmm. people are still talking about it years and years, decades later.
Yes.
I think that's true of a lot of these low-budget, made-by-friends horror movies. Like, I don't think the people who made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre really knew that they were making a classic. I don't think George Romero believed he was making a classic when he made Night of the Living Dead, but they did. Yeah. I think that part of the thing when you're making a classic is that you can't go into it going, I'm making a classic.
And I mean, getting back to the acting, you look at all of those movies, the ones that you just said, well, it's virtually non-existent. Yeah. You know?
They got their friends to do it, pretty much. And
monster movies are great for that. Just your classic monster, you know, eating and ripping and whatever. And it's like, yeah, the acting. No, you're this, you know, carbon-based bipedal thing, and you are there specifically to get torn apart. That's
the end.
There's your direction.
Like, you have to remember the name of the other character and call out their name at an inappropriate time.
And yell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too dismissive of the movie either, because it does have a couple of really classic moments in it. I mentioned this scene where one of the characters panics and she runs out into the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And
boy, was that dumb.
Yeah. She pays for it rather badly. Yep. Battered, beaten, violated by the trees, only to return back to the cabin and become possessed by a demon.
Yes.
There's also an infamous scene in which a character is stabbed in the foot with a pencil. Now, some of the special effects in this movie arguably have not aged particularly well. They use the stop motion technique for sort of the demons falling apart, and it kind of reminds me of
loved it.
It reminds me of like a Tim Burton stop motion stuff in like Beetlejuice or the Pee Wee Herman Big Adventure movie.
The dude that did all the stuff back in the 60s. I mean, the last
Harryhausen.
Yes, the Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I don't think anyone's particularly fooled by those special effects anymore. But again, they do the job enough.
So much fun.
It is. It makes more sense in a movie that is not taking itself seriously. And although there is some laughs to be had, I do think that Evil Dead takes itself seriously. It wants to be a horror movie, and it means to scare you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, when they do put the effort into it, for instance, that, which must have cost them, you know,
that was probably the most expensive few seconds of footage of the whole film. Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, obviously, when a demon, you know, or whatever disintegrates, he disintegrates in the most violent, goriest way possible.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah. And if we don't have the quality acting and the rich production value that we're used to, at least they bring the red.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the actors actually improve when they are possessed. That sounds really mean, but the sound design is really important to all of the Evil Dead movies, but especially this one. And characters who were just their dialogue was just hurting me. Even Bruce Campbell, who I love the man. I would spoon him if he asked me to.
Yes, but he's got some ridiculous.
They're bad lines, but they're bad lines delivered badly.
Yeah. It's really bad, like poorly delivered lines by a poor actor.
Yeah. I think at some point you have to be honest and say there are some pretty substantial creaks and groans to this movie. But it's still a good movie.
I'm gonna say the opening. Like, if I didn't know this movie, right, and the first 15 minutes, I'm like going, would I have turned this off? Because it's like, I don't even want to go any further with this. This is a colossal waste of time. And wow.
Yeah, sometimes
then after the fact, learning that it's like, wow, I can't believe I turned this off.
No, sometimes you're rewarded by patience.
You know, the interesting thing about skeptics is that we're always looking for proof. The question is, what on earth would we do if we found it? What did you believe?
I believe that people prefer to lie to themselves than face the truth.
Last year, the Vatican received over 500,000 reports of demonic possession.
This was taken at an exorcism in Turin.
It's not the devil. It's just a very, very sick girl. She doesn't need a priest. She needs a shrink.
Okay, so now we come to the second based on true events film. It's called The Rite. It's based on a book by Matt Bedeviled. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And it concerns the classes that the Vatican apparently offers certain priests that will teach them how to exorcise someone. They can practice the rite of exorcism. So this stars Hannibal Lecter himself, Anthony Hopkins, and some guy named Colin O'Donoghue.
Never heard of him.
Me either.
I don't think I've ever seen him either.
There's probably a reason we haven't heard of Colin O'Donoghue, because I don't know if it's because he was squaring off with a lot of really, really big actors, but he's the main character in the movie, and I got nothing. I got nothing. He was a blank slate for me.
Well, he's playing the straight man, more or less, the guy that forwards the plot, so it's like...
It had a weird sort of Neo from the Matrix in the first Matrix movie. Like, he was going from scene to scene and being given information.
Yes,
and occasionally...
when you're throwing money at a film, then you don't throw it at the one guy that's just saying plot.
Yeah.
I mean, Tony Hopkins is in it, that must have cost a bit, And then everything else that they wanted, they wanted this to look really, really good.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look terrible. The plot is fairly simple. This guy has just finished his education in the seminary college, and
in the United States.
In the United States, and it's basically decided that he doesn't have the faith, or at least not the faith enough to be a priest. So he's basically saying, "Thanks for the education, but fuck you, bye, I'm done." Mm-hmm. Thanks for the free room and board for the last few years. And he's told by his teacher and mentor, who's played by Toby Jones, I want to say. There's a lot of cool people.
He's one of those guys that you've seen a dozen times.
Yeah, Ciarán Hinds is in it too. He's a really good actor. He played Caesar in the HBO series of Rome.
Oh, the bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Rutger Hauer shows up in this movie.
As the father.
Yeah.
So when does it start falling apart?
Yeah. Well, I was starting to tell the plot. He is told by, let's say the actor's name is Toby Jones, he's told by his instructor that they're not really cool with him saying thanks for the free education.
Oh, no, yeah, they're going to totally screw him out of that.
Yeah, so if that's the way, if the attitude he's taking, then, we're going to ask for that $100,000 worth of education cash back. You're not
Catholic Church, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, neither of them are particularly, high-minded at this point. Mm-hmm. One guy's trying to steal a free education.
Oh, absolutely.
The other guy's extorting someone over money. He's basically told if he goes to the Vatican and takes this course on being an exorcist, that they will, if he takes that course and he still feels he doesn't have the faith, they will let him go and he can, not have to deal with the money. I thought it was interesting that the movie started on those terms, though. Mm-hmm. We have one character who has no faith and another character who has faith blackmailing that character into having faith.
So essentially it's about ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. There is actually, though, a really surprising and quite well-executed car accident that we bear witness to in the first act of the movie. That actually made my jaw drop a little bit just because I didn't see it coming at all.
Well, it was a good little, smack right upside the head. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's like, it's like, what are you going to do, priest?
Yeah.
Or almost priest.
Yeah.
There's this poor person lying on the ground dying, and it's like
clearly mortally injured.
And then what did you do? You went through the motion of it.
Yeah.
You just did it to make them feel better.
Yeah.
It's like,
and he did the right thing, absolutely.
I suppose, but at the same time, it's kind of like, what was that in aid of? Other than to show that, he has a crisis of faith.
Yeah.
There. Okay. Set up. Great.
And I think, we knew he had a crisis of faith, but I think we needed a sort of a jolting moment. This is a horror movie, and I was sort of starting to phase out of the movie a little bit, and that snapped me back into focus. Mm-hmm. Sudden shocking violence will do that for me.
Yep.
But then we head to Rome, to the Vatican, and we are introduced to Anthony Hopkins' character, who...
Well, no, first we go deep underneath Vatican City into the Vatican City bunker, where they have the preliminary class for exorcism, where people from all different. It was like looking at at a Star Trek scene where they have all the aliens and different people from like the Federation of Planets all talking, and then there's the whoever going with the Romulans are about to attack and blah 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 in this great big cavernous stupid, it's like, yeah, you threw a lot of money at a scene and it looks great, and it's like, this is ridiculous. Anyway,
it's ridiculous, but it's based on a true thing. I'm sure that the room doesn't look like that, but yeah.
But thanks for making this faith look like a Star Trek movie. Anyway, off he goes to see Tony Hopkins.
Yeah, and I'm going to say I like Anthony Hopkins as a rule. I mean, he'll go off the rails.
He's a stand-up actor. For me, as an actor, that is an actor that treats it like a job.
Right.
Like he just goes, okay, what is it? What am I doing? What's my backstory? And then he figures it out and he just delivers a performance.
Well, and he is to a certain extent, although a great actor. He's Anthony anything for $1 Hopkins after a point.
He's in this.
He's in this movie, and he's been in like immortal classics like Free Jack and The Wolfman,
Free Jack is one of the worst movies ever made.
Happily, most people probably have no idea what we're talking about, and they are lucky.
Yeah. That was right after Silence of the Lambs. They must have given him a paycheck with like 6 digits in it, because he's on screen for like about 5 minutes,
and he looks embarrassed to be there.
Yes.
Anyway, we're not talking about Free Jack. We're talking about the Rite. My issue with Anthony Hopkins' performance in this, like I even like a quirky, over the top Anthony Hopkins performance. He did a ridiculous movie called Habit, where he's like a dude raised by wild animals. And he is off the charts bonkers in it. Like, it's not a good movie, but I just enjoyed him in it because he's just completely willing to go anywhere with it. But for most of this performance, until this little twist that we're going to talk about later on happens, he is a guy who should be very interesting. He spends his days exorcising demons, and he looks frankly bored. He looks bored while he's doing it.
He looks pissy.
Yeah.
He just kind of like,
a curmudgeon.
We're going to go, oh, it's my 4:15. Here, follow me upstairs. I got to do this, and just sit there and be quiet, okay? And not even with that kind of earnestness.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, demons are here, and I could care less. I'm unimpressed by all of this. Now, okay, maybe you could argue he's been doing this for 50 years, and, nothing phases him anymore. But I don't know. I needed somebody who was going to, lift the curtain and let us into the world, because our protagonist, the O'Donoghue guy, just wasn't doing that for me. He was, like I said, a blank slate.
He just sat there and looked, I mean, granted, that was his character.
Yeah, and he was working against all these classically trained actors, and like we say, this is a guy who's done a handful of TV shows.
For sure.
Like, he probably felt at once lucky to get the part, then he read the script and went, well, shit, I'm the main character, but this is not my movie.
Did the check clear?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, fine, I'll show up tomorrow.
And you know what? We say things like this. If you or I were offered a part in this movie, or any shitty movie, we would say yes. I mean, I don't have any scruples. Okay, I'll do How the West Was Fun Part 2, if that's what you want me to do.
I'm the first one to actually put up my hand and go, yeah, that was a piece of crap. Please don't see it.
Yeah, no. But, I mean, hey, you're a working actor. Good for you. Anthony Hopkins is trying to relieve this unfortunate pregnant 16-year-old girl who is possessed. He's trying to save her, and basically our protagonist is watching
always him. A young girl.
Yeah, it's
Why
very
is it always a young girl?
Because we feel the most for her. If it was a young boy, we'd be like, who gives a shit? No.
Have demons got nothing better to do? Don't you think they would endeavor to actually go after someone that would make their presence more, more evil?
I guess.
But no, young girls.
Well, I don't know. Again, it's easy for us to identify, if she's young and innocent, although not too innocent if she's pregnant, I suppose. I thought her performance was fine, but again, she was playing the possessed person, so I don't know that you can overplay that.
It's scarier. That's the only reason. It's the only reason.
I think in order to adequately explain why I didn't like this movie, we're going to have to go to the end of the movie. And people will argue this is a fairly large spoiler. They certainly didn't drop it in the trailers or anything like this.
Who cares? Who's ever going to see this movie again?
Yeah,
anyway?
I would discourage you from watching the movie unless you were the biggest fan of Anthony Hopkins ever.
Yeah.
Of course, at the end of the day, our hero has to prove how good he is and how much he has learned by practicing an exorcism himself. And who is he going to exorcise? He's going to exorcise Anthony Hopkins.
Absolutely no preface to why he's suddenly possessed.
I think there's a little bit, but
he kind of loses a little bit of faith or something like that.
He fails to save this girl that he's been trying to save for a really long time,
which opens the door to demonic possession.
Yeah, the twist was so obvious, I kind of resented myself for not seeing it coming before I did. I'm like, oh my god.
I was just bored by it.
They're going to go there. They're going to make Anthony Hopkins possessed now. And,
His being possessed, was actually kind of cool. Yeah. I liked how he did it, because, first of all the effects that they did on him while he was doing it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can still see Hopkins actually coming through that. And that was actually kind of cool, But it was around that time, at the same time, that all of a sudden it struck me, I think this movie is produced by the Catholic Church. I really do. And then I just grabbed the cover and I was like, yeah, produced by the... I was fully expecting to see that. Produced by the Vatican.
Well, if they were trying to scare me into faith, they failed miserably.
Oh, boy, did they ever. In fact, they just made me angrier,
Anyone in close proximity has the same dream.
What is it?
A secret that can no longer be kept. It started a month ago.
What started?
A change in the earth and the sky. His power.
There's a weird locking mechanism. Looks like it can only be opened from the inside.
A life form is growing out of prebiotic fluid. It's not winding down into disorder. It's self-organizing. It's becoming something. What?
If you are a fan of horror movies, you know John Carpenter. And if you know John Carpenter, you know that the man runs extremely hot and extremely cold.
Unfortunately, it's true.
So I was curious to hear what you had to say about Prince of Darkness. I suspected this might be a movie that we disagreed upon, and I guess we're about to find out.
Oh, we might just find that out. Yes. So this was 1987.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, correct. It's about a bunch of students of physics and philosophy and various other disciplines. And they're summoned to this mysterious church that's sort of taken care of by the Order of Sleep.
Order of Sleep.
Yeah, and that's headed by Donald Pleasance, Loomis himself from Halloween movies. He's sort of the priest that's getting everyone together. They have found in the basement of this church this bizarre cylinder full of water, and they can't get a good date on it, and they need smart people to come figure it out, because the activity seems to be increasing. And on top of this, the homeless people in the area are starting to act really strange.
Led by
one Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Who for some reason was, like front and center as far as the marketing for this movie goes, and you see him for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, he's not really heavily focused on. I mean, if the star of your movie is Jameson Parker, one of the Simons from Simon and Simon,
does anyone even know what Simon and Simon is? I do, but I'm old, so.
If you do know what Simon and Simon is, he played the Simon without the mustache. And if you don't know what Simon and Simon is, good for you.
Well, then you don't know who Jameson Parker is.
Anyway, they all end up in this building, and they are all blown away by what they're asked to study, and soon find out that they are not able to leave this place. And not only are they being plagued by mysterious dreams, but some of them are becoming possessed, and they're starting to kill each other and come unglued. It's a really bizarre amalgam. You got sort of a zombie movie vibe, you've got, the exorcism or the possession vibe, and you've got, I guess not Satan himself, the Prince of Darkness would be Satan's son. The goal of this cylinder or whatever it is, it was a prison for the son of Satan, and he is now going to be unleashed on the world unless our heroes can find a way to stop it. What did you think of Prince of Darkness, Terry?
It was 1987, and I sat down, or actually, well, anyway, it was whatever year it was. I don't want to date myself here. And I sat down with some friends, and we're watching this movie just because, we head on to, like, Family Video, or what were some of the other video stores?
TVS.
TVS! That was it. It was TVS. So we go there, and it's like, there it was.
By the way, video stores were places one used to go to rent movies.
Yes. Yeah. And they were huge. They were huge.
They were everywhere.
Anyway, so there it is, and I see this is the latest release from John Carpenter. And of course, before that, he gave us things like Halloween and some of my personally favorite fun movies to watch.
The Thing, yeah.
And the movie before that he did was Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh yeah, Big Trouble in Little China.
And of course, Escape from New York.
Starman.
I mean, just fun, silly movies that you could really just have a really great time with. Anyway, this movie came out, and it's like going, ooh, scary, so whatever. So it's like, well, let's try this, and we sat down. It was about 45 minutes into the movie, and I realized my friends and I were sitting on the couch, and we all had our knees in our chest. And then, now, revisiting this movie again, here's the thing that I had never actually cottoned on to when I saw it the couple of times I'd seen. Well, no, I've seen it more than a couple of times. Larry, I like this movie.
Yeah.
I really like this movie. It's the science fiction aspect about this movie that I never realized is what actually gave it more credence to make it scarier for me. The fact that this priest, more or less explains that not only does evil exist, but it's on a subatomic level, and that, we have to show the rest of Earth that evil is actually just as real as touching, real things, and that good is the thing that's kind of up on the rails, up on the ropes,
I really like
the whole thing with the dreams, where the future is trying to warn the past,
I think that the theme of this movie is that science and faith need to reconcile. They need to get along the way they never have, and arguably never will.
Well, yeah.
But the priests need the scientists, and the scientists don't believe a word of anything the priests are saying, and they won't until they see something ridiculously crazy.
Until, as far as this movie is concerned, they're actually proving it.
Yeah.
They're proving the fact that this thing, whatever it is, okay, granted they don't want to call it evil, but they can't deny the fact that it exists. And they're actually proving its existence, regardless of whatever the church is and faith or anything like that. They're just proving negative and positive. And when I started to think more about that, it's like going, there's a lot more layer in this film than I first.
This film does not get enough love at all.
I don't think so.
I think, like, the fact that, not only is it they ask for science's help, but it is not the religious faith that saves the day here. It's personal human courage, and it's the scientists keeping their heads on and trying to think their way out of the situation. Anybody who panics and runs dies. Anybody who just wants to use the cross and the power of their faith to defend themselves.
Oh, the priest is useless.
Yeah.
He sits there and cowers because he is powerless against it.
And I think that's the great crux of Donald Pleasant's character, is that he realizes that. He's been a man of faith. He's loved God his entire life.
He says it. We were fools.
Yeah.
We were fools to try and contain this and to not tell people earlier, and now he thinks it's too late.
And that it's not the church that's warning us. The church doesn't bring cameras down to the basement and say, here's proof of the devil. It takes the scientists from the future sending a message from the future that we can only receive in our dreams, warning us that this is happening. The church won't warn us. We need science. And to have a movie about possession telling us that we need science is refreshing.
The fact that they refer to it as just telekinetic ability, that this thing, whatever it is, and they don't actually, it's not this nebulous kind of spirit. No, it's this, it's at a subatomic level. It's sentient and it can do this stuff. Now, granted, there, and I mean, we watched the movie and there's still lots of fun, like evil sort of, and fun. I mean, the one where the dude says, pray for death, right? And then, of course,
falls apart. He's got all these bugs crawling out of him. Great stuff.
Nice.
There's really good moments, too, and the makeup effects are awesome. There's a scene where a possessed person gets their head chopped off, and then she grabs her own head and puts it back on
with
her.
a smile
and
her face.
Throws it back on her body like she's putting a hat on. It was like really well realized, and I liked it. It's not perfect. There are a few things that I would change. Well, it's aged pretty well. It doesn't feel overly 80s.
Yeah. But I mean, there really are ridiculous aspects to this movie. Like, this church has been home to this thing for since conquistadors
since time
or something like
memoriam, you'd think.
Way down.
Yeah.
In the middle of Los Angeles. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah,
and the character that Victor Wong plays, is it Victor Wong?
Yes.
Sort of the wisecracking dude.
Yeah. Dennis Dunn.
Victor Wong was the professor, pardon me. Terrible. Dennis Dunn, he's sort of the wisecracking guy. I don't think is as funny as neither he or John Carpenter thought he was. No. He's got these zingers, and they're not appropriate for the situation. And worse than that, they're just not that funny.
Interesting. Going back to The Thing with its ensemble piece, I think this is what he was John Carpenter was trying to do again. Because when they get all these different disciplines in, then there's all these different characters, right? Of course, most of them just start getting knocked off left and right almost immediately,
But most of them get their moment, know? Like, even characters that only have 4 lines, the first and second people to kill, we get to know them and like them. In the scene, we know them,
And then a bicycle seat.
Yeah, then he gets stabbed by a bicycle. Again, have you ever seen someone get stabbed by a bicycle?
No.
Or have you seen someone who sort of explodes into roaches? Actually, I have. I have seen another person explode into roaches.
Seen that one, but that
Creepshow. There's a guy who explodes into roaches in Creepshow.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, there's one individual who he's possessed, but there seems to be some sliver of humanity left in him, and he keeps fighting back.
Yes,
and he's pouring sweat, and he's half laughing and half crying.
Oh yeah,
great stuff.
Great. Good actor. He was in Darkman at the beginning of it. The guy that Durant.
Oh, the finger guy.
Yes.
Anyway, the bullet point here is that I really, really, really like Prince of Darkness, and if you like scary movies, you should watch it.
Absolutely.
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world. The world of darkness. Nobody expected it. Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it.
There are no experts. You probably know as much about possession as most priests. Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself.
Okay, we always talk about how we're scared of spoilers, or like we're not sure how to handle spoilers. I put a spoiler warning at the top of the show as to the content of the movies that we're going to discuss.
Everyone dies.
Here's a spoiler not for the movies, but for the rank-in review. My number one choice for these movies, which I thought was fairly obvious, is The Exorcist. I actually think The Exorcist is one of the finest horror movies ever made. Strong words. It's different than most of my very, very favorite horror movies in that it's studio produced. It's a big budget Hollywood production. It's not a group of friends who made a movie on weekends. This is the real deal Hollywood. They got Ellen Bernstein in here. They got a really good director who won an Academy Award for The French Connection.
Well, it was the 70s for one thing.
Yeah. They took a popular book by William Peter Blatty, and they turned it into an amazingly frightening horror movie. So much so that people actually fled the theater or vomited or meant to feel, nauseous when they saw it. It really, really stirred the pot in the box office. And without The Exorcist, there would be no Omen. There would be no... the whole genre or subgenre of exorcism.
It's the grandparents of...
It is.
This, 73? 72 or 73?
According to the DVD case... Oh, this has both versions. 1973 for the original and 2001 for the version you've never seen. Which version did you watch, by the way?
Well, I mean, I watched the version you've never seen.
But the differences are subtle enough that we can discuss it.
It's like I'm like going, I don't know what was added and what wasn't added. Like the whole beginning with the
beginning is extended, but the most famous thing that they added was the crab walking down the stairs.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reason that it was cut is a righteous one. It happens too early in the movie. There are still scenes after that where she's wondering, I think my daughter might be possessed. And I'm sorry, if your daughter crab walks down the stairs and spits out a bunch of...
I don't think so.
No?
She's already, walloped her, right?
Yeah. But,
she's already done that, with the telekinesis and
the
everything. The
bed was shaking and she punched her mom out, but it was before she was doing the crucifix stuff and before her voice changed and before...
I see, so the crucifix stuff wasn't bad enough.
Yeah. Well, this
but
was
her
another
crab walking down the stairs.
This was another step in the chain. I mean, it was a strong image and it was pretty frightening. But for me, I think
when I revisited it, I mean, I watched that version and then there it was. And of course, I've seen it because when they came out with this, in 2000 or
2001,
something like that,
yeah.
Of course, then I don't know where I saw it, but I saw it. I saw the crab walking. Of course, now you see the crab walking in every horror movie. See, this movie is so stolen from. People steal from it all the time.
Just it's the little things, too. We always talk about how these movies predate computer-generated effects. Mm-hmm. So when they wanted to see the priest's breath in the room, they refrigerated the fucking set. Mm-hmm. Everybody in there was wearing winter clothes to shoot this movie.
Meanwhile, poor Linda Blair just had the sheets and the duvet to actually be under.
Little personal note from me too. This is another movie. In the last episode, we were talking about The Fly, which is a movie that I saw way too young. This is another one of the movies that I saw way too young. My dad would let me more or less watch anything as long as he was in the room.
Sure.
And if it was something that I shouldn't be watching or I wouldn't like, I would sort of leave typically. But I have a very clear image of myself playing with He-Man figures behind the couch. So I couldn't see the TV. I'm behind the couch, but I'm just listening to this movie. I'm listening to this voice that I know is supposed to be emanating from this little girl.
It's a beautiful time for an exorcism, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Instant hair-ups on the back of my neck. I mean, maybe it's not even fair because it was burned into me at that too young an age. But
well, how old were you, do you think?
Well, I was the single-digit age category. I was playing with action figures and laying on the floor behind a couch.
Yeah, I don't remember when I saw it as a teenager, and I guess at that point it's like, okay, and being a Catholic too, it's like, okay, I know where this is going. I know what's actually happening. That's way too glib. I don't know what's actually happening, but it's like, okay, demonic possession. Well, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
The plot, and again, if you haven't seen The Exorcist, shame on you. Ellen Bernstein, who is a very talented Hollywood actress, plays a very talented Hollywood actress who's in Washington, is it?
Georgetown.
Georgetown, right.
Which is a suburb of Washington.
Yeah, she's filming a movie there, and Her daughter starts playing with a Ouija board. Weird sounds start coming from the attic. She slowly becomes convinced from a series of, failed doctor's appointments from chain-smoking physicians, which I thought was hilarious. She finally starts to believe that her daughter is indeed possessed. And she gets Jason Miller, who plays Father Karras, and
Damien
eventually
Karras.
Yeah, and eventually Max von Sydow, who is just an amazing actor, and at the time a young man playing an old man.
I know, yeah. It's funny looking at him and go, was Max von Sydow always old?
No. And they have to come and try and rid this demon from this poor little girl. It has such infamous scenes as, yes, a small child stabbing herself in her private parts with a crucifix.
Wow.
And then trying to shove her mother's face into it.
But even before that, let's back up when she brings the doctor in, and then she's doing that,
she's swinging like a crazy person on the bed up and down.
I mean, that for me right there, that's freaky enough.
It's terrifying.
It's really weird.
But if you want to back it up even further, Terry, I think one of the scariest moments in the movie for me, and I know that's going to sound weird, is when early, they're having a big rousing party, everyone's around the piano playing music, and this little girl walks into the middle of the room, points at this astronaut, and says, "You're going to die up there," and then urinates on the floor in front of everybody. Okay. And she doesn't have the scary voice yet, she doesn't look all possessed or fucked up, she's just a little girl. And I like that scene gives me chills.
Like a kid sleepwalking or something like that just wets her pants. But of course,
she just sucks the air out of the room.
As the moviegoer, it's like, oh no, this is just gonna get worse, isn't it?
Exactly.
But for 1973, we had no idea just how worse it was gonna get.
We hadn't seen the rotating head. We hadn't seen the pea soup vomit. We hadn't wow.
Yeah.
Every single other movie, I think every single one of them, with the possible exception of House of the Devil, I will say directly at some point rips off or pays homage to The Exorcist.
Oh, totally.
And I don't know if that's just lazy filmmaking or if it's just unavoidable.
Well, again, it's kind of like either you haven't seen this film because you've just heard too much about it and are frightened of it, right? Or you've seen it, and it's like everything after that, as far as the horror genre is concerned, especially with any sort of possession-y type angle in that movie, it's from that.
Yeah.
It's totally from The Exorcist.
The Exorcist is classic.
Yeah. It's hard to actually say anything new or refreshing about it simply because what? Just watch the film and get freaked out. It's there's a couple of things about this film that are interesting. First off, it's just a novelization, right? By William Peter Blatty, right?
It's based on a novel by William Peter Blatty.
It's fiction.
Yes.
Right.
It's based on a case of a boy who was apparently possessed, but he changed it a lot.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Oh, totally. You know he did. Because again, here's the interesting thing about possession movies after this, is that they always follow that sort of formula, right? Again, I'm always weirded out that demons, I'm gonna possess you. Why possess a little girl? If you can possess, why don't you go after a statesman?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
or someone in the military or something like that. Again, it's
made up solution to made up problems, but I'm going to say
so much of the genre comes from this movie and only this movie, and simply because it's frightening.
Yeah.
Logically, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. When I revisited it, the police officer in it, why was he there?
At the end of the movie there?
No, the guy that comes in, first he more or less interrogates Karras, then goes to interrogate the mother. And this is what he's doing. He's interrogating, right? Why is he there? He's only forwarding plot, and his only reason for being there is to...
There was vandalism in the church, right?
Oh, there's all that and everything, but he doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
He's just...
You're absolutely right. I've seen that movie a lot of times, and I'm not quite sure what role they're that up. He's a friend of Father Karras.
Yeah.
They're like buddies, but...
I guess,
Huh.
He's just after this murderer, but it's like all of a sudden this cop becomes a real focal point of the movie. And it's like, why?
Well, because at the end of the movie, I think we need a need a friendly face.
I think we can put that case to rest.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Satan was booked at Precinct 12.
Yeah, if it was a slightly older movie, if it was Psycho, he'd be like the guy at the end of Psycho who implicitly tells the audience, this is what happened, this is why, this is what you should be thinking while you leave the theater.
Take it easy.
Happily, the filmmakers decided not to go there. But I guess I agree.
I guess I was wondering how much Friedkin actually kind of changed from the novelization. I've never read the book, so I'd be interested. I'm not going to, but I would be interested to see how much was changed.
I did read the book, but it was in the early 90s, and I don't. It felt very close to me. But yeah, The Exorcist.
Anyway, Exorcist. Yeah, great movie. It was a great movie.
I can tell you like it.
I love it. It's perfect. About the deposit, I'll agree to waive all the deposit stuff. You just give me the first month's down, we'll call it a day, all right? It's hard coming up with all that money, isn't it?
It's gonna work out.
You're not the one with $84 in her bank account and a check to write on Monday.
You know what you should do.
Hi, I'm calling in regards to the babysitter flyer posted outside my dorm.
The night's big eclipse is now well underway.
I feel a little weird just dropping you out here in the middle of wherever we are.
Okay, The House of the Devil. This writer-director, Ty West, has sort of been making a name for himself in sort of the low-budget horror movie field for the last few years, and people are keeping their eye to him. He contributed a segment to the anthology film VHS, and he did a decent little ghost film called The Innkeepers. But I think the one film that sort of first made people stand up and say, who's this Ty West guy, was this peculiar throwback of a movie called The House of the Devil. It's made to look like it was made in the late 70s or early 80s. The aesthetic of the movie is very deliberate to look like that time, to have that pace and that feel of those early movies. But it was made 4 years ago. And it's got a very, very slow pace. And it sort of culminates into some really bizarre set pieces of madness and strange behavior. But for me, it's not winking at you. It's not saying, hey, look at this production values, look how cool in 80s, and look at our aesthetic. It is trying to creep you out. It's not about being a funny, wacky throwback to how cheesy the movies used to be. This is almost like, it's like a loving tribute to the deliberately paced movies of, the late 70s and early 80s. The question is, does it work today as a horror movie? And I guess that's what I'm posing to you now.
No.
Okay. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's a bad sign, Larry. When I'm watching a film and the counter is on the DVD player and I'm watching the minutes pass going, is something gonna happen? Please, just some. What I really liked about this is Dee Wallace is in it.
Very briefly, yeah.
So the credits go by after she's gone, and it says, and Dee Wallace. I think this is how it worked, because she's at the very beginning of the film, more or less.
Our main character is looking at an apartment to rent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dee Wallace was in Close Encounters.
We've talked about her already before. She's in many, many genre movies.
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically a cameo role here. It's a nice face to see, but she doesn't have a lot to do.
She has nothing to do with nothing. She's like the crazy Texan in Psycho. That more or less just, I'm pointing something out, and there it is, and now I'll go over there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I liked about is Andy Wallace as the landlady. I'm like going, I already this movie doesn't make sense. So, we're going along, and we're doing things, and I'm watching. I'm being patient, mind you. I'm being patient. I'm watching. I think where it fell apart, where all of a sudden I'm just kind of like, checking my cell phone, is when she starts dancing around the house to the
I
Fix.
did want to talk about that sequence.
It's a song called One Thing Leads to Another by this band. I think maybe they had 2 or 3 songs that charted in like 1983, 4, like when I was in high school,
Well, I didn't even pick up on the song. I figured it was of the time, but
well, I guess the time that this movie was actually supposed to be, it.
They played almost the whole song. She danced around in this empty house, and there was no payoff.
And then, she goes off to screw with other things. I guess or maybe I'll go order pizza, or maybe I'll bump that off, or I'll go and check this door, or I'll go. This lasts for about a half an hour. Larry, why did you make me watch this?
Well, here's why I disagree with you almost entirely about this movie. I agree with you that the scene where she's dancing in the house takes a long time, but let's talk about how she gets to the house. Mm-hmm. This girl is strapped for cash, and she gets a babysitting job that on its face is clearly too good to be true. Mm-hmm. So much so that her best friend does everything she can to try and talk her out of it.
Oh, yes. That sequence took about 15 minutes.
Tom Noonan.
Mm-hmm.
We actually just talked about him in the last episode. He had a small role in 8-Legged Freaks. He plays...
That dude's been around forever.
I love that dude. He has a very specific thing that he does. He's got this specific look and the specific voice, and he is so nervous and so tightly wound in this movie. Like, right away something is up with this dude, and so does she. But she needs that money, and she wants it to be true. Our character does almost everything wrong until the very last moments of this movie. Now, I can understand how people will be frustrated with this, but in her head, in her brain, she's not in a horror movie. There's something clearly wiggy about these people, but she believes that she will be able to stay in this house for 4 hours. I believe that they're only going to be gone.
I don't think she knew she was in a movie.
Well, just bear with me for a second. Her friend tries to warn her. Her friend drives her there. Finally, she leaves it, and these eccentric people scream, "We are crazy. There is something bad afoot." He admits to lying to her. He is ridiculously overpaying her. She tells her over and over again the number on the stove to order pizza. And, they nail down these points so hard to the point where you're like, okay, I get it. What the fuck? Now,
keep in mind, people, this is about an hour and 15 minutes into the movie. So that's what we've established. Okay, continue.
She's in the house, she plugs in their earbuds, and she's dancing around. Now, our main character, you could argue, was frustrating in that, she just seems unwilling to see really obvious signs that something is not afoot.
Hey, this is totally the direction she was given.
She puts in the headphones, and I can relate, because I'm a headphone type of guy, that having your music and being, in your own headspace is a great escape. Mm-hmm. So she's not thinking about the spooky mansion that she's in. She's just focusing on her music. I can relate to being walking down by the river on the bike trail, listening to my Discman back in the day when people had things called Discmans.
Mm-hmm. She had a Walkman.
Yeah. And then the batteries would die. Mm. And then I would realize that I'm by myself in this pitch black wooded trail. And all of a sudden, this is a really creepy environment. It takes a long time for the music to stop in this movie. But when the music stops, I think it is fucking scary. Terry clearly disagrees.
Why did you make me watch this movie? The other thing, too, so long to get to anywhere for me that you care. That you care. Now, and here's the thing. Again, I'm watching the clock, going, where is this? Like, I understand that they're trying to make this 80s. I grew up in the 80s, all right? I've seen... The 80s was the birth of the slasher film, right? It started with Halloween. After that, and I mean, the thing with slasher films is I did not like them. They were boring. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't do anything. People just knocked off. Anything as far as that genre goes, even the beginnings, because of course you can say, like, of course all of them have had, like, how many sequels has Jason had?
10, and then of course the immortal classic Freddy vs. Jason.
And then how many has Freddy had?
I want to say 7. And the immortal classic Freddy vs. Jason.
And then how many has Michael had?
I want to say
5 or 6 or something like that.
I think there is 8 in the original series, and then of course the Rob Zombie ones. I'm not 100% on that, but Rob Zombie did 2.
And out of all of that, so we're looking at well over 20 movies, right? Almost 30. The only one that actually held my attention at all was Halloween. That was the only one. The rest of them, boring. Same kind of pacing, right? Except...
I would argue they have a faster pace than this. Usually someone dies within the first 5 or 10 minutes of any of those movies.
Because nothing happens until about 35 minutes in when, what's her name, Blam?
Yeah, when one of her characters gets her face blown off.
Yeah, which is just like, what the ding-dong?
The movie has been so serene and so quiet and so, like, she's startled. This character played by A.J. Bowen thinks that she's the babysitter leaving. And obviously he's been standing post to make sure that she doesn't try to leave. And so he's talking to her and being very sweet to her, saying, sorry to startle you. It was kind of creepy out here. But once he realizes that she's not the babysitter, his face completely changes and he blows a hole
just gives
through
her
her
the
head.
gun.
And
boom.
We hadn't seen anything like it, and we've been waiting for it. At this point, the movie needs to bring the red.
Something.
And I thought that was kind of a ugly, disturbing moment. Plus, I think that the most likable character of the movie just died at that point.
I swear to God, I think this movie was made because this Thai guy just wanted to get into his lead actor's pants.
Yeah.
It was just tedious.
I respect that he
Larry,
allows
the ending.
He lets people. He lets the movie take its time. He lets the movie breathe, and he wants the audience to meet him halfway. He doesn't paint by numbers. He's not trying to placate you. He's making his movie, and you have to wait for things to start to go down. But like I said, once the worm turns in this movie, I got freaked out.
I understand. Let's put it this way. I understand that you like it. This is actually for somebody that actually will get into this. And I am not that person.
All right. It's a personal difference.
And frankly, this has missed the mark as far as a lot of people I would know, because we'd all be doing the same thing. It's like, what? Can something, please? Anything? Yeah. Anything?
Again, in the real world, we wouldn't assume we're in a horror movie.
As soon as Girlfriend gets capped, right? It's like, okay.
It's on.
We're and then another 20 minutes of her watching TV. It's just nothing.
Well, she gets drugged. She orders the pizza that she is repeatedly told to order. A.J. Bowen delivers the pizza.
And that was 45 minutes later.
There's a sequence where she goes up...
This movie, how long is this movie?
95 minutes.
Yeah. It feels like 3 hours.
Right. Well, it's 95 minutes, and there's a scene where she goes up to this spooky door, and you can tell someone's shifting around behind it, and you see the doorknob move a little bit. There's pretty intense suspense to that. And the movie has been so slow and so, like, methodical, almost Kubrickian in some of its long shots and weird takes. And then the ending happens, and Tom Noonan and his fucked up wife show up back, and she's in the middle of a pentagram getting stuff painted onto her abdomen with red, and people are getting their throats slashed, and they're screaming, and it goes like completely bonkers. It's a slow boil, and
then she escapes.
It's a slow boil, and it requires patience. But I think that if you are into the horror genre, yes, that's the movie in its entirety. Obviously, we disagree on House of the Devil. I say give it a look. Terry says only if you're a hard
Enjoy.
All right, we've managed to review 6 movies on Bedeviled, so it's Terry Schroell's turn to rank and review these 6 movies that I force-fed him. I'm sorry you had such a hard time with House of the Devil and The Exorcism of Emily Rose, but how did they turn out? How low do we go with House of the Devil? I'm curious.
Well, if I could go lower, I would. That was definitely number 6. Yawner, couldn't wait for it to end, and when it did, unsatisfactory. Yawn. Number 5 was Exorcism of Emily Rose. Again, Satan on trial for some reason, and apparently he loses because he's just not that good. You know, that's Hollywood for you. Number 3, The Rite. You know, produced by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church should not produce movies. It gets a little tricky here. It gets a little tricky. And I have to go simply by production value and entertainment value. Number 4, Prince of Darkness. Love this movie. I suggest to anyone sit down, turn up the lights, and enjoy. Number 5, The Exorcist.
Wow.
Only because there's a couple of things out of that movie that I felt was extraneous and wasn't serving it as much as it could have. But it's what it is. But I still have to say number 1, Evil Dead, simply because, and this is crucial, it's just wall-to-wall entertainment. And isn't that what a movie is supposed to be?
You mean Prince of Darkness?
What?
Sorry, I'm confused here. So, sorry, number 6, your least favorite,
House of the
Devil. Or House of the Devil. Right.
Yes.
Number 5, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yes.
Number 4, The Rite.
3 is the, or 4, yeah, is the Rite. Yeah.
3,
Prince of Darkness.
2, Exorcist, and 1, Evil Dead.
1 is Evil Dead. Yeah. Because Evil Dead is just, as far as me as a filmmaker, just entertaining. And frankly, that's what a movie should be. There. Ha!
We have very different lists. I liked House of the Devil a lot more than you did. And I also, as much as I like Evil Dead, I have to take it in context with all of these other movies here. You're going to get mad at me.
Siskel. Unbelievable.
Number 6 for me actually was The Rite. I found our central character to be completely uninteresting. I thought it interesting that both the motivations of him and, his priest teachers were kind of highly questionable. And I found it leading into the, over-the-top, I'm possessed Anthony Hopkins performance just didn't pay off for me, particularly at all. Number 5, I will say House of the Devil. I like the movie. I mean, I like most all of these movies, actually. It's for a specific taste, perhaps. I know it wasn't to your liking, but I really liked that they got the aesthetic of those old movies dead right for the most part. And they paid homage without winking. They made a horror movie that looked like an old movie without winking, and I appreciated that of it. So, yeah, that's number 5. Number 4, I'm going to give, controversially, to Evil Dead. The production value is low, the acting is low, the talent behind the camera is great. There's some good boo scares to it. It's a cult classic for a reason. I encourage people to watch it.
It's an iconic classic.
Number 3, surprisingly, to you, will be The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I found it interesting. I have never seen a horror movie / legal procedural before, and I thought it worked better than it did. I think that the nugget story that we're
I wish I said that was number 6 now.
I think that the shell of the story is sound. I had some issues with the Laura Linney's character that set in the present, but I really enjoyed the stuff that happened in the past, and it worked well enough for me. Number 2 would be John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. This is one of those movies that for a while I thought I was like the only person that liked. It seems that the more years that go on, the more people who say, you know what, Prince of Darkness is a pretty damn decent movie. And I agree, it is a pretty damn decent movie.
Yes.
And I think that there's some stuff to think about there, and I'm not used to that in a John Carpenter movie. And like we were saying before, I mean, when John Carpenter is hot, he is hot. But when he is off the mark, he misses by a good mile.
Ghosts of Mars, ladies and gentlemen. One of the worst movies of the 90s.
And number 1, of course, The Exorcist. I mean, it's a classic. It informed, like I said, pretty much all of the other movies in the selection.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I think that it deserves its reputation as both a classic and as a scary fucking movie.
Let's take out horror as classifying this movie. Let's just say it's a really, really good movie. Very well done. But it did give rise to movies like The Exorcism of Emily Rose. So that takes away from that movie.
All right, Terry and I took a moment to change into our tuxes, and it's now time for the 4th annual Jerry's. We've only got 3 awards to give out.
Annual?
Yes, we've got 3 awards to give out, and I will list off the nominees, and as this is your episode, these Jerry's belong to you. You can award the recipients. So, best death or scare moment in all of these films. We have the scientist character at first being stabbed about 3 dozen times, then
by
becoming
the crazy bag lady.
Yeah, then becoming possessed, then yelling out to all the other people they needed to pray for death before melting into a puddle of writhing insects.
And his voice was all like that. I have some bad news for you. That was genuinely a really creepy moment out of Prince of Darkness. Because the framing of it was like that, and he's just that character. They're looking out of the window at him in the parking lot. Then all of a sudden, he just crumples. Because, of course, all these bugs have essentially hollowed him out.
Yeah. It's also the moment where the rest of the characters realize they cannot leave the building. Yes. It's the turning point of the movie.
Yeah.
The first half of the movie, it's like slow build. Some people get edged off, but nobody knows anything wonky's going on.
Or they just don't get it yet.
This is the moment where the key turns and the movie goes into high gear.
They all see it.
Yeah. To give you another chance to take a hot, wet shit on House of the Devil, I included the death of Greta Gerwig, the best friend character who parks in the graveyard.
That was out of the blue. It was in your face, and it's like going, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like, I'm watching a horror movie. I'd almost forgot.
He picks up her cigarette.
Takes her cigarette out of her dead hand and starts smoking it.
There's brain everywhere.
And then
45 minutes of nothing after that.
I'm glad that you liked at least one moment of the film. I got that out of you. And my last nominee for Best Death goes to Jason Miller from The Exorcist for his tumble down the stairs. And you notice that at the end when he's holding that father's hand, his hand keeps slowly opening and closing. Like you're not sure, kind of.
See, it's interesting because, when he comes back in and there's Max von Sydow just lying on the ground, and then you realize, oh my God,
He's alone. Yeah.
Like Captain Howdy has won.
Yeah.
Captain Howdy has won.
How's he going to pull it out?
And then he loses it, and then for some reason, then it exchanges bodies and then whatever, But yeah, it was a cool ending to a cool movie.
So those are your 3 nominees. Who's going to take it?
Bugman.
Prince of Darkness.
Bugman.
All right. Prince of Darkness winning its first Jerry. Exciting news.
Great death. And he's already dead.
Yeah.
He's long gone,
For best performance in these 6 movies, great actress Ellen Bernstein playing a difficult role.
Oh, absolutely.
In The Exorcist.
And totally committed watching her. I mean, when she goes to Father Karras and, is trying to talk to him about sort of things, and then she tries to slide it, and who would you call about an exorcism?
Yeah.
It's like right there. She doesn't even believe it herself.
Yeah. It's interesting too because she's meeting in the park, but she's all incognito because she's a celebrity. She doesn't want to be hassled by
I don't
people.
think it's that.
No?
I think it's because she can't believe what she's just about to ask.
It's not an easy question to ask.
And that whole scene right there, brilliant.
Yeah. Anthony Hopkins for the Rite.
You know what? It's again, there's all the effects going on with his face and whatnot and everything like that, and it's CG and whatnot, and yet it's like going, he does a really good job of that. I mean, it's Tony Hopkins. I mean, that's what he does.
I think the wheels went off in the last act, but that's me. I don't know. Like I said, I like him even at his most unhinged.
I'm just talking about, taking it totally out of context, his being possessed.
Right.
Enjoyed it.
And to give you yet another chance to shit on The House of the Devil, I nominated Tom Noonan because he's my boy, and I dig what the man does.
I'm weird, and I do weird things. And I'm tall, and I've done this for the past 30 years, and
we are both envious of his career.
And pizza.
Make sure you order pizza from the number on the fridge.
Call for pizza.
I love it. He's like screaming that I'm crazy, and she's just like at a job interview trying to get the job. Doesn't matter how fucking crazy he behaves. She's like, okie dokie. So those 3 performances, which would you give?
Ellen Bernstein.
Ellen Bernstein. I kind of guessed. I would side with you on that actually. Okay, the last Jerry we're giving out, and the last little piece of my podcast here. Thank you so much for being here for Rank and Review, Terry.
I've enjoyed every moment.
If you're not scared to, we can try this again. You can go round 2. I'll try. I won't involve any Ty West. I understand you're not good for any movie that requires patience. Okay. What the fuck? Burn. We kind of doubled down on the what the fuck moments here because you put the Pray for Death.
Well, I mean, maybe more for like a really good line from a movie. And like you said, that right there is the moment where everyone that isn't possessed and still of their faculties realizes, whoops,
we're in a bad situation.
Some deep, weird, evil shit.
Yeah.
Just a great line.
Right. The line from The Exorcist where Regan emulates the voice of the director calling, "Do you know what your canting daughter did?"
That was really disturbing.
Yeah.
Because of course that's when her head does a 180.
Was that the same thing?
Oh yeah. That's the one.
Oh, right.
Crack, crack, crack. Do you know what your... Yeah, it's horrific.
And then we have the mirror sequence, sort of the climactic sequence.
Going back to
Prince of Darkness.
Back to Prince of Darkness, it's like, what? Where did that come from? And yet it was so effective.
There's lots of pieces on the move here too. We've got the possessed woman calling out to the son of Satan or whatever.
Which of course is all like...
She looks horrible.
And horrific. And of course the character that played it, of course, is this really nice lady, and she's really great, and then just by accident,
Yeah.
She's the one that has to
nicest
bring
person of them all.
Satan into the world.
So we've got this meat grinder face of this really nice girl who was pregnant when she got possessed too, just to add a little extra sting, screaming and doing her stuff into the mirror. We've got Donald Pleasance pinned to the wall, sort of rambling, Jesus God, where are you?
Yes.
We've got Simon, the Jameson character, wrestling with a possessed zombie person. And then we've got...
it's a good climax.
Yeah, all of these pieces sort of move into place. And
then our heroine that realizes...
It's time to take the jump. Yeah.
This is the only thing I have. I can either let the world go to shit, or I can deal with it myself. And then, of course, trapped in the netherworld of evil. It's like, it was a great ending.
Yeah.
Loved it.
So is that's your pick then? Or?
Yeah. The Mirror, actually.
Right.
That's a good.
I thought you were going to go with Counting Daughter.
Again, creepy,
moment too.
But I mean, out of all the creepy moments of that film, I'm just picking one that I really, really thought was really creepy. It's the first time Reagan, has a different voice, that of course this demon can actually bring upon him. It's like, that's pretty creepy. But no, Mirror, yeah.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
It's not just... And thanks for the beer, too. The beer actually helped.
I'll just sign that check. And then,
yeah, about that.
Thank you for listening to the 4th episode of Rank and Review.
Yep, that was Bedeviled with Terry Schroell. And now you know what it's like when someone who's not a hater meets somebody who is all about hate. No, seriously, Terry Schroell was not playing a role. That is how he is every day of his life. If you would like to write me, and if so, please do, you can do so at rankandreview@gmail.com. That is RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again.